All right, let's get started. Any questions from chapter 1? We all good so far? So some quick announcements. We have a quiz due today, right? If you go to the Blackboard, you're gonna see this new tab here. If you just click the link, there's nothing, but the link will pop up at 3. So you're gonna have the link from 3 to 11 p.m. today. Finish the quiz. I believe there will be 4 problems, so that means you're gonna have 12 minutes to do that. And I recommend don't wait till 11, okay? Because the link will be gone at 11. So if you feel like I'll do at 10:30, your laptop has no charge, your Wi-Fi isn't working, and it's almost 11, then I'm not. So I just give you more time. So if any accidents happen, you can cover that. Don't wait till 10:30. Try to do it as quick as you can after 3. Make sense? And I believe you guys know the policies, right? No backtracking, 1 question at a time. So do like you have 3 minutes for each question. So treat each question independently and just spend 3 minutes. That's it. It's all of your own. Do it by yourself. No notes, no books, all closed. If you need the financial calculator, you can use it. And the announcements. Most of you give me your group number, group member information, and also the currency. But I believe I'm missing for 2. And the deadline is today. If you did not email me and did not hear back from me, that means you're in trouble. So do it by today. If you get the email back, you know your currency, you're in a good shape, no worries. If not, do it by today. Okay? And I believe a lot of currencies are selected. So if you're the last 2 members, try to give me multiple options so that I can select what you want to do. So any questions? Okay, moving on. We're gonna start chapter 2. So from last class, what do we mostly learn? We mostly learn international business or international trade, right? So when you talk about international trade, we mostly do export and import, right? Rather than international trade, what else we can do? We can go for franchising. We can either completely acquire new corporations globally, or we can start a new subsidiary, right? Foreign subsidiary. If we have to do that, what do we have to do? We have to do some investments. Direct foreign investment or DFI, right? So if we want to engage in any of these 3 activities, what is common in nature? If you want to export, import, DFI, what is the common thing among these 3 activities? Think about these 3 activities. You want to export, or you have to import, or you want to build a new subsidiary globally. What is the common thing in each? Huh? What do you do with the currency? If you want to do this 3 kind of activity, what is common in nature is exchanging currency, right? Exchanging money, right? Exchanging flow of funds, right? So in chapter 2, we're going to learn flow of funds. Chapter 2 is all about international So when we exchange those currencies, when we exchange those funds, basically we make some payments. Either we make those payments or either we receive those payments, right? So in finance, in economics, this is known as balance of payments. In today's class, we're going to learn key components of the balance of payments, and then we'll talk about some events or contracts or mutual agreements that actually help to grow the international trade or balance of payments. So what is the balance of payments? Very easy. In name language, let's say USA does export, import, or investment with numerous countries. So that means if we fix USA, it has different type of payments received and payments done across different countries, right? So balance of payments for each country is basically a sum of or a combination of all those payments either made or received across different countries. So you can think about it's the summary of transactions between one country with all foreign countries for a specific period of time. If USA made export and import to China, they have balance of payments. USA made export and import with Canada, Mexico, their balance of payments. It's a summary of transactions with the domestic country, with the foreign country across a period of time. Mostly, balance of payments are presented or calculated annually or yearly. When you talk about balance of payments, it has basically three components: current account, financial account, and capital account. So basically, current account records all of those transactions that is either made or paid for goods, services, or any income from the financial assets. So basically, if we talk about some example, if we did an export, if we did an import for both goods and services, all of those transactions will be recorded in current account. If we have any investment on financial assets globally, if we receive dividend, interest payment, all those income from financial assets will be recorded in current account. In other words, you can think about current account records all those transactions. Those are short-term in nature. Because if we want to make one export or one import next month, it's a one-time activity, right? If we get some dividend or interest annually, so it's your annual income, right? Short-term activities, right? So current account records all of those transactions for goods and services, export and import, and income from the financial assets. Financial account. Financial account records all of those transactions that is made for any direct investments, that is made for purchasing any financial assets. You can think about financial account is more like records transactions for long-term activities. Let's say if we want to create a new subsidiary outside of USA, we want to do the business for a long period of time, right? Maybe for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, right? So that activity, long-term activity will be recorded in financial accounts. If you want to invest in foreign portfolios, Tokyo Stock Exchange, or in Canada, in Europe, stocks and bonds, you want to invest for 5, 10, 20 years, right? All those investments will be recorded in financial account. So current account mostly record transaction short-term in nature. Financial account mostly record transaction long-term in nature. Capital account is basically a unique type of financial account. Let's say you have business outside of USA. Now you want to sell that asset because you want to transfer. You want to transfer from one country to another. Or let's say you have some sort of financial asset. You want to sell this because of transfer, or you have copyright, you have patent, you want to sell this. So capital account actually transact all of those transactions, that is basically from sale of asset because of your moving out, because you want to transfer from one country to another. So capital account is basically kind of a financial account, but you can think of it's a unique version or very specific version of financial account. So any questions? Current account, capital account, financial account. Good so far. So some key things you need to know for any kind of transactions you want to make, could be long-term or short-term. If we make the payment, that is outflow for us, and that is considered as a debit in the statements. If we receive the payment, that is the inflow for us, and that is considered credit in the statement. And any inflow is good for the domestic currency. And outflow is bad for the domestic currency. The more inflow you have, that means you are able to sell goods or services and you're generating more revenue, right? So that is good for your economy, your currency. The more outflow you have, that means you're paying for goods, services, something else outside of your country, right? So that is bad for your currency. Current account has 3 different sections. So when we talk about current account, we actually record transactions if we make payment or if we receive payment for goods and services, which we call exports and imports. And the difference between export and import is known as balance of trade. So balance of trade is calculated by deducting import from export. So what you can interpret if your balance of trade is positive, what does it mean? If your balance of trade is positive, what does it mean? What you can interpret? Is it good? Is it bad? Is good? Why? You're exporting more, you have more inflows than outflows, right? So balance of trade is really, really good indicator for an economy. So it's trying to say how much you're earning from outside. If it's positive, it's good for you. Second component in the current account is basically primary income payments. If you have subsidiaries outside of the country, if you have financial assets outside of the country, you will generate regular income, right? You will generate regular sales from there. You will generate regular dividend, regular interest from there. All of those income is recorded in the current account as a primary income payment, right? Another thing in the current account is secondary income. And it is basically consisted of aids, grants, and gifts. Do you know there is a Statue of Liberty in New York? Have you ever visited there? Do you know who made this? Huh? France gifted to New York, right? So this is kind of a gift to New York. Sometimes we know that there are like global crises, maybe due to natural disasters. Different countries send help, right? In terms of money, medications, food. Those are known as aid. So those are considered in the current account as secondary income. Sometimes different currencies give you money for research, right? Maybe for new vaccines, maybe for new medications. Those are considered as grants. So any aids due to natural disaster or problem, any grants for R&D activities or innovation, any gifts from one country to another is considered in the secondary income and recorded in the current account. If you receive it, it's an inflow for you. If you pay it, it's an outflow for you. So COVID is the only natural disaster only when no country help each other. That is the only natural disaster only when no country help each other. But other than that, if you Google any natural disaster, there will be some countries helping the affected countries. Question so far, current account. What are the components we should record in the current account? All good? So let's look at this some real data from here. Copy. So this is some real information about US. Starting from 2016, 2021 quarterly data. So this is current account, the entire current account, considering payment for goods and services, primary and secondary income. Okay. And now you can think about this is for goods, this is for services, primary, secondary. Who wants to explain what we can interpret from there? What do you think? US current account, positive or negative?
Negative.
So what does it mean?
We import more than we export.
Okay. So if we look at the goods, so this is basically net of export and import for goods. So for the goods, way negative, right? So US imports a lot of goods than it exports. Way negative. What do you think of the services? Is it positive, negative? What does it mean? So exports a lot of services than imports, right? Yes. Okay, so this is basically primary income, all of their foreign investments, either in terms of real asset or financial assets. What do you think? Positive, negative. Positive, right? So that means USA has more subsidiaries outside or more financial asset outside than outsiders have subsidiaries in US, right? So earning positive value, right? What about this?
We give more aid and grants than we receive.
Okay. Did you pay more? Did you receive more?
Pay more.
It's negative, right? That means you pay more, right? So it's basically USA give aid, not grants, because they have their own researcher in US to do those R&D and innovation. So they give a lot of aids, charities, a lot of other things. And that is why It's negative. USA in general don't receive any aids, and also in general don't receive any grants mostly, because they have their own researcher and they can do their own grants and everything. Now going back, we'll talk about a lot about the real data shortly, but going back, let's try to classify these transactions, okay? So these are some examples of only trade. These are not primary income or secondary income, okay? These are some examples of only trade. So let's talk about what should be the correct cash flow positions and whether it should be debited or credited. So first example, if Walmart purchases clothing from Indonesia to sell in US retail stores, it's an international trade, right? It's an export, import, outflow, inflow, what's that?
Important.
Import, right? And outflow, inflow. Debit or credit? The second one. Inflow, outflow. Outflow means debit, right? Third one. Inflow of goods or services.
Services.
It's inflow for the service, right? Sponsoring service. Credit, right? Fourth one. Outflow for goods or services. Goods. Goods. Okay. Debit, right? Fifth one. Inflow for goods. So what you need to do is to think about it's an export or import, outflow or inflow. Okay. So inflow is always good for the domestic country. These are some example of primary income transactions. So what do you think? Problem one. Inflow for financial assets or real assets? Financial asset, right? Because it's not a business, it's a financial asset. Second one. Outflow for financial asset, right? Third one. Inflow, outflow for financial asset or inflow for financial asset or inflow for real asset? Real asset, right? Because it's our own business. We have subsidiaries.
Outflow.
Or Just the opposite, right? Let's look at these two examples of secondary income.
Alpha,
For
A, and
info for,
grant.
yes, so you're in good shape. Okay, before we move on to financial account, let's talk about a lot of real data. So far from the real data, what we learned, US current account balance is negative, right? And this is due to what? This is mostly due to a lot of import of goods, right? If we go here, this is all 2022 information by month. We can get the same information, right? Net service is positive, but net goods is way, and that is causing current account to be negative. Let's see what we have in 3. So here you can see what goods US basically export. If you look here, 2022 in millions, all of these values are in millions. So this is the export amount for foods and beverage, industry supplies and materials, capital goods, and this is automobile, consumer goods. So in short, if you think about the goods that US exports, is basically capital goods and industry supplies. These are the major 2 items that US exports to the foreign countries. If you look at imports, I believe same thing. Industry supplies is their major source of imports. And then capital goods also. And they import a lot of consumer goods. They mostly export capital goods and industry materials. But in terms of import, capital goods, industry materials, also a lot of consumer goods. And that actually causing current account to be negative. So I uploaded this Excel file in the Blackboard. So just go and look around, and you'll get some interesting information from there. So any idea, if you want to classify US trade with countries, what could be some major countries US do trade? Any idea, like, with whom US trade a lot? What do you think? China, what else? Anything else other than China? Definitely, China, they do trade a lot with US. So if you go there, so this is basically the balance. This is export, this is import. So if we look at export, the largest are Mexico, European Union, China, but What else? So US export mostly to European Union and Mexico, then China. When it comes to export, European Union and Mexico comes before China. In terms of import, let's see what's going on. This is Mexico, this is European Union. Okay, in terms of import, China comes after European Union. But if you look at the raw values, European Union have, I believe, 14 or 18 countries. If you combine them, they're on the major trade partner, let's say, if you combine all these 14 or 18 countries. And also Mexico, another major trade partner, and China. So these are the three major trade partners of USA. Any idea from where USA import the crude oils? USA don't want to drill their own crude oil, right? They want to import, refine, sell or use. From where they import most of their crude oils?
Saudi Arabia.
Okay, what else? Anything else other than Saudi Arabia? Let's see. So there are definitely one of them, but let's see. Go to 17A. This is basically in terms of quantity of imports. You can see Canada, Mexico, Saudi Arabia. So from Saudi Arabia, this is the number one, the import crude oil, and the second one is Canada. So if you want to see like in terms of industry type, so if you're taking process finance, you should know what is NICS code. NICS or NICS or SIC code are widely used in financial industry to classify industry type. So let's say we are talking about commercial banks. Commercial banks have SIC code of 6022. So if we talk about SIC code 6022, we are talking about commercial banks. US Bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, we are talking about them. So NICS code or SIC code are widely used in the industry to classify different industry like agriculture, commercial bank, then maybe retailer, manufacturer, something like that. So if you want to see like different type of industry, US importing or exporting, I believe you'll find here. So look around this Excel file, try to explore what excites you most, like in terms of export and import, what you want to know, US is doing what else with some other countries. You can just play with this Excel file. So moving on to financial account. So when we talk about financial account, we're basically talking about long-term activities. So financial account records all those transactions either for direct investment in foreign countries, to buy a new company, to start a new subsidiary, or to make any portfolio investment there. Could be stocks, bonds, or money market instruments. This account records all those transactions made for long-term purposes. Could be made for your different investments, portfolio investments, or other capital investments. Finally, capital account. As we already talked about, it's a very unique type of financial account because it summarizes any transaction, any flow of funds between two countries when you want to sell because of your moving to a different country. You're selling any asset, you're selling your copyright, your patent, your licensing, because you're moving from one country to another country. And those kind of transactions are recorded in the capital account. So your balance of payments is basically a combination of these three. Short-term activity in current account, long-term activity in financial and capital account. And these three actually will tell you what is the balance of payments. Question so far? Now, what do you think about this sample question? What do you think? D? Okay. You are one the giving. Chen? Chen, okay. From Chen and now it's Steve. Anyone else? B? Okay. Lina told B. Anyone else? No, also B. Okay. From this is B. This house is B. So B, B, A, C. What else is it? Okay, that A or D. How do you say your name? Anta, okay. Anta, A or D. Anyone wants to support for C? D may be feeling sad, right? Anyone else? So far we got 2 votes for B, right? 2 for D. 1 for A. Anyone else?
Put my money on D.
You put your money on D. Okay.
I'll have it in D. I'll do D.
Okay. 3, 3, 1.
It can't be even, we need one of a one.
It's the issue with the project. You can see that. You need got confused. Oh, B. You go for B because he convinced you? No, I just now. So let's talk about the events, okay? So let's say USA. USA imposes tariff. That nothing from Mexico, hypothetically, anything from Mexico, if imported, there will be more tariff. Tariff is more about the import tax or import duties. More about like that. Anything that imported from Mexico will be charged tax, which was not before. Let's say, which was not before. What is the implication?
Import is going to be more expensive, so it will be less likely to buy.
people will less than the value, right? So there will be less of import, right? So if there's less of import, think about balance of trade. Should go up or go down? So balance of trade is going up, right? So if balance of trade is going up, that means current account go up, right? Because balance of trade is a component of current account, right? Current account will go up. So that means what you can answer? B, right? So if current account goes up, that means what? We can reduce outflows because we are importing this. We can reduce, it's not an inflow, but we are reducing outflows through this increasing balance of trade, increasing current account. That should be an increase. That's good for US economy, good for US currency. Make sense? So now, yes.
What if, like, what is retaliation? Like they decide to not export goods to us anymore, like for us to import?
Yeah, that can happen. So you're saying that Mexico can also do the same, let's say hypothetically. Yeah, that can happen.
Or they refuse to then export goods to us? Wouldn't that be the same thing then when we have an increase?
Who is refusing the export?
Yeah, say Mexico, we put a tariff and then they deny to export to us then,
Yeah, that can happen too.
and then it would still be an increase.
Yeah, that can happen too. So there will be less import, but at the same time, in USA, for the similar product, we may need to pay more. But that can Italy, yeah, that can happen too.
Retaliation usually refers to the other country paying on tariffs of the same amount, so it can just go back to or it can-
Yeah. So they can do the same import tariff or they can, yes.
Okay, so let's say they did retaliate, wouldn't it depend on who is importing or exporting more, depending on if it's going up or down? Because we import more than we export there, and we each have the same amount of tariff, whoever exports more than they import from them is, it's still gonna go up, right?
Say that again.
Okay, so let's say they did retaliate, same
Okay.
amount of tariff.
Okay, on
Only
imported
the-
product from US.
Yeah, only the net exporter between the US and Mexico, they would still have an increase though, wouldn't they? Because
Yeah.
there's still less coming out, because there's more going down anyway.
Okay. Let's figure it out on the respect of this one. Assuming no retaliation, first of all. If it's not, it should be increased, right? But when you talk about retaliation, then there is a lot of other factors we need to think about. We have to think about exactly on which imported goods we actually put the tariff, right? Is it the goods that was imported a lot in the economy, or is it goods that's not imported a lot? Right? At the same time, when they are retaliating, we have to think about exactly on which goods they are doing that, right? So we have to think about a lot of other factors. And then we have to think about volume here. And finally, it can decide which way the balance of trade will go. So long story short, you have to understand if there's a tariff on the import, they're definitely going to release the imported products. Okay. And now if someone else, the other country is also doing the same, then we have to think about how it's going to affect the volume. And the net volume going to decide. And it could be stay the same too. If they also retaliate effect is on the same on the volume, it could stay the same too. But for these problems, we're assuming the other country will do nothing. They'll just do nothing. If they don't do anything, what is the impact? We'll do lower import, but in the case of export, they are doing nothing because their import, they are doing nothing, right? So we'll keep the export constant. Import will go down. Make sense? So that means balance of trade will go up, current account will go up, and there will be an increase. Make sense? But for retaliation, it's really, really a complex answer. We have to account for a lot of factors that are going to affect the volume of these two components. But good questions and good discussions. So anything else? So good so far. So we're done with balance of payments. Now let's talk about some events that actually motivated international trade. So we'll talk about some history, like what really happened in history. So from my childhood, which I really think is to learn history. But today we're not talking about history. So this is something happened in Europe. So they actually removed the Berlin Wall so that they can connect Eastern Europe with Western Europe. So now what is the benefit? There is more mobility of trade, more mobility of labor and other resources. After they have removed this, so now Eastern Europe is more accessible. You can go there for trade, you can get the cheap labor from there. So this is an event that actually triggered a lot of international trade. Now, Single European Act of 1987. So I believe this is the act so that they can do a lot of trade. So by this act, I believe if you just go to the book and read it, so by this act, I think they want to do a lot of trade within the European countries. A lot of export and import within the European countries. North American Free Trade Agreement, popularly known as NAFTA. So this is a trade agreement, I believe, between Mexico and USA. And we already looked at Mexico is one of the largest trade partner of USA, right? So this is an agreement between Mexico and USA so that they can export and import between these two countries. And the most important thing, they can access labor, cheap labor in Mexico. So for this trade, more export and import between US and Mexico, and also US can access more cheap labor from Mexico, so that they can lower their cost of productions. So there are a lot of mobility between US and Mexico for this agreement. So this is a trade agreement, a general agreement on tariffs and trade. And I believe this is done among 100 countries. Among 117 countries. So they actually agreed that within those countries, there will not be a lot of tariffs and trades, so that they can do a lot of export and import. So they can reduce those tariffs, tax, this kind of thing. So any kind of agreement between any countries or among any countries, if it reduces tax and tariff, that is a good sign, because it's motivating more export. And sometimes they do some kind of agreement so that labor is more mobile among those countries, because labor is cheap and expensive in different parts of this world. If you can access to cheap labor, your cost of production will go down and you can make more money. So these are some specific events that actually increased trade volume. The most important agreement in last, I believe, 20 years is creating European Union, right? So I believe in 2004, mostly countries from Western Europe, like 18 or 14 countries from Western Europe, they actually initiated this process. So they actually decided they want to add more eastern part of European countries in that agreement. What is the benefit? Among those 20-25 countries, there are really barely any tariffs and tax. They can do a lot of export and import. They can even move among those countries, right? So the labor is way moving, right? Labor can move from one country to another country for productions. But the most important benefit of this agreement is creating a new currency, which is known as euro. What is the benefit of creating this currency? So those 20 to 25 currencies, they can report the statements in euro. And for trade, they can also use euro, right? So what is the benefit? They can eliminate, completely eliminate, even not reduce, completely eliminate currency exchange risk. The exchange risk, the volatility in the currency. So this is the most important benefit of creating euro. It's not about only more trade, not about only better labor. It's also about eliminating exchange rate risk or currency volatility. But in 2018, what happened? Brexit, right? Great Britain exited from the European Union, right? So this is the most important event in the last 20 years, one of the most important events that actually have a lot of impact on the international trade for the European countries. So there are some other factors that actually impact international trade. One of them is known as outsourcing. Do we know what is outsourcing is? It's a really common word, right? So what is outsourcing? What is outsourcing? So anyone wants to explain? Yes.
Moving some part of the production process to a different country, usually, relations with wages, can be one.
So when he thinks about moving to different country, so do we own the subsidiary on that country for that productions? Who owns that, like the corporations or production process in a different country? Yes.
It's owned by that country, it's just a subcontractor, it's not actually part of the home company.
Absolutely. So that's the thing. So when you talk about outsourcing, so we're trying to do one of our jobs, like the home country corporation's job, by subcontracting to a third party. With third party, we as a home country company don't own that corporation. We have no material relationship with the corporations mostly. We are looking for a third party to do a subcontract so that we can carry out some of our operations. Have you ever fly with like international airlines? Maybe, I don't know, Emirates, Qatar, Thai, China, Eastern South, have you ever? And did you call to their customer service agent? Did you call? Hey, I want to reschedule my flight, or I want to refund, I want this, I want that. All those customer service are basically outsourced. So mostly if you're flying with international airlines corporations, don't operate in US, but you're flying from US and you need to reschedule, you need to do something else, you're trying to call a number which is basically outsourced by their corporations. All those call center customer representatives are outsourced. What is the benefit? Why should you go for outsourcing? So the benefit of outsourcing is lower cost. The benefit of outsourcing is lower cost. What is the problem? Disadvantage. Think about from the home country. If Apple, Tesla, IBM, Microsoft started doing outsourcing all of their major operations, there will be lower jobs in USA, right? Major disadvantage, lower jobs. So if any corporations may engage in a lot of outsourcing, so they are basically in a dilemma. What is the dilemma? Because big corporation CEOs sometimes talk about we created number of jobs, thousands of jobs. in US. So they want to create some jobs or they want to do outsource. Because from the first class, we know that what is the goal or objectives of financial managers. Maximize shareholders' wealth. How can they do so? If they go for outsourcing, they can reduce costs, they can look or make their investments more profitable, right? But at the same time, if you think about big corporations, they have some sort of corporate social responsibilities for their home country economy, for their home country society, right? They create jobs for the home country, right? So what they should do? Should they create jobs? Should they work for shareholders? What they should do? What do you think? What they should do? Create jobs, do everything outsourced, cheapest cost possible. So let's think about you are on the seat of a CEO. What do you want to do? You run a corporation. You want to outsource everything, maximize shareholders' value. You want to create jobs. What makes sense? Because big corporations, those publicly listed corporations are sometimes also rated for their CSR, corporate social responsibility. If you Google, you'll find that there's an index that try to explain for each corporations how much corporate social responsibility they do. They create jobs, they follow green environment, something else, equal opportunity. So it's a tough answer. So basically they have to balance the trade-off. Sometimes they really do some outsourcing if that job doesn't require a lot of quality, a lot of ethics, a lot of standards, principles. They do some decent amount of outsourcing, but at the same time, they prefer most of the cases to create jobs in their home country so that they can continue the branding of the corporations, they can maintain the quality, and they can grow the economy of the home country. So if you think about US, trade volume of US is basically 10 to 20% of its annual GDP. Only 10 to 20% is basically from annual GDP of USA. Now, these are some information I believe we already go over, right? Where US export a lot. Export and import by country, we actually go over this information. And this is not new to us, right? Negative balance of trade. So we know that, right? So we'll stop here today. Take your quiz, go through the materials we did today, and also go through the Excel file. You can find some Excel information. That's all.
Don't see.
Yes.
I have to say that.
Spreadsheet.